Marcus Williams stood at the entrance of the Oceanic Naval Training Center, his worn duffel bag slung over his shoulder. The morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine white buildings, and he could hear the distant sound of recruits marching in formation. At 22, Marcus had joined the Navy not out of patriotic duty, but out of necessity. His mother's medical bills were piling up, and his younger sister needed money for college. The military promised steady pay, benefits, and a chance to build a better future. The first thing Marcus noticed was how different he looked from most of the other recruits. While the majority came from military families or suburban backgrounds, Marcus had grown up in the inner city of Detroit. His clothes were clean but obviously secondhand. His shoes had been resoled twice, and he carried himself with the careful awareness of someone who had learned early that the world wasn't always fair. Chief Petty Officer Bradley Hutchins was waiting in the processing center, his crisp uniform adorned with ribbons and insignia that spoke of years of service. Hutchins was a man in his early 40s with steel gray eyes and a perpetual scowl. He had built his reputation on being tough, demanding, and uncompromising. Some said he was fair but strict. Others whispered that he had particular disdain for recruits who didn't fit his idea of what a sailor should be. When Marcus approached the desk, Hutchins looked up from his paperwork with barely concealed irritation. The chief's eyes swept over Marcus from head to toe, taking in every detail of his appearance. There was something in that gaze that made Marcus's stomach tighten with unease. "Williams, Marcus Anthony," Marcus said, presenting his paperwork with steady hands despite the nervous energy coursing through him. Hutchins took the documents without looking at Marcus directly. He flipped through the pages slowly, his expression growing more disapproving with each page. Marcus's academic records were solid, his physical fitness scores were excellent, and his background check was clean. But none of that seemed to matter to the chief. "Says here you're from Detroit," Hutchins said, his voice carrying a tone that made the city's name sound like an accusation. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, keeping his voice respectful and even. "And your father?" "Not in the picture, sir." Hutchins made a note on the paperwork, his pen scratching across the page with unnecessary force. "Raised by a single mother, I see. Public schools. No military background in the family." Marcus felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. "That's correct, sir." The chief finally looked up, his cold eyes meeting Marcus's. "Let me be clear about something, Williams. This isn't some social program designed to give people like you a leg up in life. This is the United States Navy. We have standards here. We have traditions. We have a way of doing things that has worked for generations." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Marcus understood the subtext perfectly. He had encountered this attitude before in various forms throughout his life. Teachers who assumed he wouldn't succeed, coaches who thought he didn't belong, store clerks who watched him with suspicious eyes. But he had learned long ago that responding with anger only made things worse. "I understand, sir," Marcus said simply. "I'm here to serve and to learn." Hutchins leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with the expression of someone examining an unwelcome insect. "We'll see about that. Report to Barracks C, 3rd floor. Your bunk assignment is in your packet. Orientation begins at 600 tomorrow." As Marcus gathered his paperwork and turned to leave, he heard Hutchins mutter something under his breath to another petty officer. The words were too quiet to make out clearly, but the tone was unmistakable. It was the sound of someone who had already made up his mind about Marcus's chances of success. The barracks were a long, sterile building with narrow windows and the smell of industrial cleaning products. Marcus found his assigned bunk on the 3rd floor, a bottom bunk in a room he would share with 7 other recruits. His bunkmates were a diverse group from various backgrounds. But as they introduced themselves, Marcus noticed that most of them had family members who had served in the military. They spoke casually about military customs and traditions that were completely foreign to him. That evening, as Marcus organized his few belongings in the small locker beside his bunk, he overheard 2 of his bunkmates talking in hushed tones near the window. "Did you see how Hutchins looked at the new guy?" one of them said. "Yeah, Williams is going to have a rough time. Hutchins doesn't like his type." "What do you mean, his type?" "You know what I mean. Poor kid from the city. No military background, probably thinks the Navy owes him something." Marcus continued folding his clothes, pretending not to hear. He had learned long ago that defending himself against such assumptions often backfired. Better to let his actions speak for themselves. The next morning, Marcus woke before the 0500 wake-up call and was dressed and ready when the lights came on. He had always been an early riser, a habit developed from years of helping his mother get ready for her early morning cleaning jobs. While his bunkmates stumbled around in the dim light, Marcus was already making his bunk with military precision, having watched instructional videos online before arriving. During the first day of orientation, Marcus paid careful attention to every instruction, took detailed notes and asked thoughtful questions. His academic background had taught him how to learn quickly and efficiently. When they were taught how to properly salute, he practiced until his form was perfect. When they learned about naval history and traditions, he absorbed every detail. But despite his obvious competence and dedication, Marcus noticed that Chief Hutchins seemed to be watching him with particular intensity. Every time Marcus performed a task correctly, Hutchins would find some minor flaw to criticize. When Marcus's uniform was perfectly pressed, Hutchins would comment that his shoes could be shinier. When Marcus's shoes gleamed like mirrors, Hutchins would suggest that his posture needed work. It became clear that Marcus was being held to a different standard than his fellow recruits. What might earn others a nod of approval earned Marcus a lecture about the need for improvement. What might result in mild criticism for others became a public dressing down for Marcus. The pattern continued day after day, and Marcus began to understand that this was not going to be a fair fight. Chief Hutchins had decided who Marcus was before giving him a chance to prove otherwise. But Marcus also understood something else. He had faced unfair treatment before and had overcome it. This would be no different. He would work twice as hard, be twice as dedicated, and prove that Chief Hutchins's assumptions were wrong. 3 weeks into basic training, the harassment began in earnest. It started small, with Chief Hutchins assigning Marcus extra duties that weren't given to other recruits. While his bunkmates had free time in the evenings, Marcus found himself scrubbing floors that were already clean or polishing brass that already gleamed. When he completed these tasks to perfection, Hutchins would find new ones, always with the same explanation. Williams needs extra practice to meet Navy standards. The other recruits began to notice the pattern. Some felt sorry for Marcus, but most were simply grateful that they weren't the target of Hutchins's attention. A few even began to distance themselves from Marcus, worried that association with him might bring unwanted scrutiny upon themselves. Marcus's response to the treatment was to work even harder. He woke earlier, stayed up later, and approached every task with meticulous attention to detail. His uniform was always perfect, his bunk always immaculate, his performance in drills always flawless. But instead of earning recognition, his excellence seemed to irritate Hutchins even more. "Look at Williams trying to show off," Hutchins would say during inspection. "Thinks he's better than everyone else because his shoes shine a little brighter." In the real Navy, Williams' teamwork matters more than individual performance. It was a no-win situation. If Marcus performed at an average level, he was criticized for not meeting standards. If he excelled, he was accused of grandstanding. The psychological pressure was designed to break him, to make him either quit or lash out in anger, giving Hutchins an excuse to recommend his dismissal. One particularly humid Thursday morning, Marcus was called out of formation during physical training. Hutchins approached him with a smirk that immediately put Marcus on guard. "Williams, report to Building 7 after chow. You've got a special assignment." Building 7 housed the administrative offices and, more importantly, the bathrooms used by visiting officers and dignitaries. When Marcus arrived, he found Hutchins waiting with a bucket, rubber gloves, and an industrial-strength toilet brush. "Congratulations, Williams," Hutchins said with mock ceremony. "You've been selected for the honor of maintaining the executive washrooms. These facilities are used by some of the most important people in the Navy, so they need to be absolutely spotless." Marcus looked at the cleaning supplies and then back at Hutchins. He understood immediately that this wasn't about cleanliness or honor. This was about humiliation. In the military hierarchy, janitorial work was typically assigned to junior enlisted personnel on a rotating basis or handled by civilian contractors. Singling out one recruit for toilet cleaning duty was clearly punitive. "I understand, sir," Marcus said, reaching for the supplies. Hutchins' smile widened. "Oh, but there's more. You'll be doing this every day for the next 2 weeks. After your regular training, after your regular duties, you'll come here and make sure these toilets sparkle." "And Williams?"
"Yes, sir."
"I'll be checking your work personally. If I find so much as a water spot, you'll start over." As Hutchins walked away, Marcus heard him chuckling to himself. The chief was clearly enjoying this moment, savoring what he believed was his victory over the uppity recruit who had dared to think he belonged in the Navy. Marcus put on the rubber gloves and got to work. The bathrooms were already reasonably clean, maintained by the regular janitorial staff, but Marcus scrubbed every surface until it gleamed. He cleaned toilets, sinks, mirrors, and floors, with the same meticulous attention to detail he brought to every other task. Word of Marcus's punishment spread quickly through the recruit barracks. Some of his fellow trainees looked at him with pity, others with a mixture of relief and guilt. A few made jokes behind his back about Marcus finally finding his proper place in the military hierarchy. But Marcus refused to let the humiliation break his spirit. Each day he completed his regular training with excellence, then reported to Building 7 for his cleaning duties. He scrubbed toilets with the same dedication he had once applied to his studies, the same determination he had shown when working multiple jobs to help support his family. The psychological toll was significant, though. Marcus found himself questioning whether he had made the right choice in joining the Navy. The money was good and he was learning valuable skills, but the daily humiliation was wearing him down. He thought about his mother working double shifts at the hospital, and his sister studying hard to maintain her grades. Their faith in him gave him strength to continue. One evening, as Marcus was finishing his cleaning duties, another recruit named David Chen found him in Building 7. Chen was one of the few trainees who had consistently treated Marcus with respect and friendship. "This is messed up." "Marcus," Chen said, watching Marcus polish a faucet until it gleamed like silver, "everyone knows you're one of the best recruits in our company. Hutchins is just picking on you because..." "Because why?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. Chen struggled with the words. "Because he's a small man who gets his power from putting other people down. Because he sees something in you that threatens him." Marcus appreciated Chen's friendship, but he also knew that dwelling on the injustice wouldn't change anything. "It's just temporary," he said. "I can handle 2 weeks of cleaning toilets." But as the days passed, Marcus began to suspect that Hutchins's harassment wouldn't end with the toilet cleaning. The chief seemed energized by Marcus's stoic response to the punishment, as if the lack of visible breakdown was a personal challenge. Hutchins began to drop hints about additional special assignments that might be coming Marcus's way. Other instructors at the training center began to notice the pattern as well. Petty Officer Rodriguez, who taught seamanship classes, made a point of praising Marcus's performance in front of the other recruits. Instructor Thompson, who led physical training, consistently ranked Marcus among the top performers in the company, but Chief Hutchins outranked them all, and his word carried the most weight when it came to recruit evaluations. As the toilet cleaning assignment neared its end, Marcus prepared himself for whatever new humiliation Hutchins had planned. The psychological warfare was sophisticated and deliberate. Hutchins never crossed the line into behavior that could be easily reported or documented. He was careful to frame everything as legitimate training or discipline. Marcus was learning a hard lesson about how power could be abused within systems that were supposed to operate on merit and fairness. But Marcus was also learning something about his own resilience. Each day that he completed his degrading assignment without complaint was a day that he proved to himself that he could endure anything. Each perfectly clean toilet was a small victory against those who wanted to see him fail. As he scrubbed and polished, Marcus thought about his future. He had joined the Navy to build a better life, and he wasn't going to let one bitter chief petty officer derail those plans. Whatever Hutchins threw at him next, Marcus would meet it with the same quiet determination that had carried him through every other challenge in his life. The harassment escalated after Marcus completed his 2 weeks of toilet cleaning duty. Chief Hutchins seemed frustrated that his punishment hadn't broken Marcus's spirit or provoked the angry outburst he was clearly hoping for. If anything, Marcus had emerged from the experience more determined and focused than before. Hutchins began to get creative with his persecution. He assigned Marcus to kitchen duty during meal preparation, requiring him to arrive at 0400 to help prepare breakfast for the entire training company. Then he scheduled mandatory evening inspections of Marcus's gear that kept him awake until nearly midnight. The combination meant Marcus was surviving on 3 to 4 hours of sleep per night. The sleep deprivation was designed to affect Marcus's performance during the day, giving Hutchins ammunition to criticize his competence. But Marcus had learned to function on little sleep during his years of working multiple jobs while attending school. He adapted by taking short naps during brief breaks and maintaining his energy through sheer willpower. When the sleep deprivation tactic failed to produce the desired results, Hutchins moved to social isolation. He began spreading subtle suggestions among the other instructors that Marcus might be a problem recruit who required special attention. He hinted that Marcus had an attitude problem, that he was arrogant and uncooperative. The other recruits in Marcus's company began to notice the pattern of harassment, and their reactions were mixed. Some, like David Chen, remained supportive and continued to treat Marcus as a friend and equal. Others, however, began to distance themselves, worried that association with Marcus might bring unwanted attention from Hutchins. A few recruits, particularly those who came from military families and felt they had more natural claim to belong in the Navy, began to echo Hutchins's criticisms. They whispered among themselves that maybe Marcus really didn't fit in, that maybe Hutchins was just doing his job by weeding out someone who didn't belong. The psychological pressure was immense. Marcus found himself constantly second-guessing his actions, wondering if he was somehow provoking the treatment he was receiving. The isolation was perhaps worse than the extra duties, as it made him question whether he would ever truly find acceptance in the military community he was working so hard to join. During this period, Marcus's academic performance remained excellent. He scored at the top of his class in navigation, seamanship, and naval history. His physical fitness scores were consistently among the highest in the company. His uniform and personal appearance were always perfect. But none of this seemed to matter to Chief Hutchins, who continued to find fault with everything Marcus did. The breaking point came during a routine barracks inspection. Marcus's area was, as always, immaculate. His bunk was made with military precision, his locker was organized perfectly, and his personal items were arranged exactly according to regulations. Hutchins examined everything with a magnifying glass, clearly hoping to find some minor infraction. When he couldn't find anything wrong, Hutchins decided to create a problem. He deliberately knocked over Marcus's water bottle, spilling water across the floor near Marcus's bunk. "Williams," Hutchins barked, "your area is out of order. There's water on the deck." Marcus looked at the spilled water, then at Hutchins, understanding immediately what had happened. The other recruits in the barracks watched in uncomfortable silence, knowing they had witnessed something clearly unfair but afraid to speak up. "Yes, sir," Marcus said quietly. "I'll clean it up immediately." "You'll do more than clean it up," Hutchins replied. "You'll redo this entire inspection. Strip your bunk, empty your locker, and set everything up again. And you'll keep doing it until you get it right." For the next 3 hours, Marcus repeatedly broke down and rebuilt his bunk area while Hutchins found new ways to declare it unsatisfactory. The other recruits were dismissed to go to chow and then to evening recreational time, but Marcus remained in the barracks, starting over again and again. It was during this marathon inspection that Petty Officer First Class Maria Santos happened to walk through the barracks. Santos was a respected instructor who taught communication systems and had a reputation for fairness and professionalism. She stopped when she saw Marcus alone in the barracks making his bunk, for what was obviously not the first time that evening. "What's going on here, Williams?" she asked. Marcus straightened to attention. "Inspection, ma'am. Chief Hutchins is ensuring my area meets standards." Santos looked around the barracks, noting that all the other bunks were empty and that Marcus's area was clearly immaculate. She had been in the Navy for 15 years and had seen enough to recognize harassment when she witnessed it. "Where is Chief Hutchins now?" "He stepped out, ma'am. He'll be back to check my work." Santos studied Marcus's face, noting the exhaustion and stress but also the determination to persevere. She had been watching the situation with Marcus for weeks, and while she couldn't directly contradict a senior chief's authority, she was becoming increasingly concerned about what she was witnessing. "Williams, in my professional opinion, your area exceeds Navy standards. Whatever Chief Hutchins told you to fix, you fixed it." "Thank you, ma'am, but I need to wait for the chief to approve my work." Santos nodded, understanding the impossible position Marcus was in. She couldn't directly countermand Hutchins's orders, but she made a mental note to document what she had observed. She was beginning to realize that Marcus's situation might require intervention from higher authority. When Hutchins returned 20 minutes later, he found Santos still in the barracks, ostensibly checking on some communications equipment. His expression showed annoyance at the unexpected presence of another instructor. "Santos, what brings you to the recruit barracks?" "Just checking some equipment, Chief. Williams here has been working very hard on his inspection. His area looks outstanding." Hutchins' jaw tightened. He couldn't continue the harassment with another instructor present, especially one of Santos's rank and reputation. "Very well, Williams. You're dismissed." As Marcus gathered his toiletries to head for the showers, Santos caught his eye for just a moment. Her expression conveyed a message of support and understanding that gave Marcus a glimmer of hope. For the first time since arriving at the training center, he felt like someone in authority had seen the injustice of his situation. That night, as Marcus finally got some sleep, he didn't know that Petty Officer Santos was writing a detailed report about what she had witnessed. She was also making some phone calls to colleagues she trusted, asking discreet questions about how to handle situations where recruits might be facing unfair treatment. The tide was beginning to turn, though Marcus wouldn't know it for several more days. Santos wasn't the only instructor who had noticed the pattern of harassment. A network of concerned personnel was quietly beginning to document Hutchins's behavior and look for ways to protect Marcus without directly challenging the chain of command. News of an important inspection began circulating through the training center on a Wednesday morning. Admiral Rebecca Morrison, the commanding officer of the Naval Education and Training Command, would be conducting a surprise evaluation of the facility. Admiral Morrison was a legend in the Navy, known for her sharp intelligence, uncompromising standards, and zero tolerance for any behavior that didn't reflect the Navy's core values. Chief Hutchins received the news with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. An admiral's visit was an opportunity to showcase his leadership and the quality of his training program. It was also a chance for career advancement if everything went perfectly. Hutchins immediately began planning how to present his recruits in the best possible light. For Marcus, the news brought a different kind of anxiety. He knew that Hutchins would be under extra pressure to demonstrate excellence, and that pressure might translate into even more harassment. Hutchins had a reputation to protect and couldn't afford to have any of his recruits reflect poorly on his leadership during such an important visit. The morning of the inspection, Hutchins gathered his company of recruits for a special briefing. His demeanor was more intense than usual, his voice carrying an edge of barely controlled stress. "Listen carefully," Hutchins began, pacing in front of the assembled recruits. "Admiral Morrison will be touring our facility today. This is the commanding officer of our entire training command. Her opinion of this company will reflect directly on me, and therefore on all of you." He paused to let the weight of his words sink in. "I expect perfect performance from every one of you. Perfect uniforms, perfect bearing, perfect responses to any questions you might be asked. If anyone embarrasses me today, there will be consequences that will follow you throughout your naval career." Marcus listened carefully, understanding that this warning was directed primarily at him. Hutchins was making it clear that any perceived failure on Marcus's part would result in severe retaliation. After the briefing, Hutchins approached Marcus privately. His voice was low but filled with menace. "Williams, I'm assigning you to special duty today. You'll be cleaning the bathrooms in Building 7 during the Admiral's visit. I want you out of sight and out of mind." The message was clear. Hutchins didn't trust Marcus not to somehow embarrass him in front of the Admiral, so he was removing Marcus from any possibility of interaction with the visiting officer. It was another humiliation, but Marcus had learned to accept these assignments without protest. "Understood, sir," Marcus replied. "And Williams," Hutchins added with a cruel smile, "make sure those toilets are spotless. If the Admiral happens to use those facilities and finds anything less than perfection, you'll be scrubbing toilets for the rest of your time here." Marcus reported to Building 7 with his cleaning supplies, while the rest of his company prepared for the Admiral's inspection. The building was bustling with activity, as staff members prepared for the important visit. Marcus could hear the sounds of preparation echoing through the hallways as he made his way to the bathroom facilities. The irony wasn't lost on him. While his fellow recruits were being positioned to make a good impression on one of the Navy's most senior officers, Marcus was being hidden away like a shameful secret. But he approached the cleaning assignment with the same meticulous attention to detail he brought to every task. Admiral Morrison arrived at the training center at precisely EO 900 hours. She was a woman in her early 50s with silver hair, intelligent eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Her reputation preceded her as an officer who had risen through the ranks, based on merit, and had fought hard to earn respect in a male-dominated institution. The Admiral's inspection tour began with a review of the training facilities and a meeting with the senior staff. Chief Hutchins was in his element, presenting reports on his company's performance and highlighting their achievements. His confidence was evident as he guided the Admiral through the carefully planned tour. Meanwhile, Marcus worked alone in Building 7, ensuring that every surface gleamed. He had finished the main bathroom facilities and was moving on to the smaller executive washroom when he heard footsteps approaching in the hallway. The voices indicated that the inspection tour was heading in his direction. Marcus quickly gathered his cleaning supplies, not wanting to be seen by the Admiral and potentially cause embarrassment for Chief Hutchins. He had learned that his presence sometimes created uncomfortable situations, and he wanted to avoid any confrontation that might reflect poorly on the training program. But as he tried to slip out of the executive washroom, Marcus found himself face-to-face with Admiral Morrison herself. She had stepped into the facility while Chief Hutchins was explaining some aspect of the building's layout to other members of the inspection team. For a moment, neither Marcus nor the Admiral spoke. Marcus stood at attention with his cleaning supplies in hand, his uniform impeccable despite his janitorial duties. Admiral Morrison's sharp eyes took in the scene immediately, understanding in an instant what she was witnessing. "And who might you be, sailor?" the Admiral asked, her voice carrying the authority of her rank but also a note of genuine curiosity. Marcus's mind raced. He was supposed to be out of sight, hidden away from the Admiral's visit. Chief Hutchins would be furious if he discovered that Marcus had encountered the Admiral, but Marcus also knew that lying to a senior officer was unthinkable. "Seaman Recruit Williams, ma'am," he replied, maintaining perfect military bearing. Admiral Morrison studied Marcus's appearance. His uniform was pristine, his posture was textbook perfect, and his demeanor was respectful and professional. The contrast between his obvious competence and his current assignment was striking. "What's your assignment here today, Williams?" Before Marcus could answer, Chief Hutchins appeared in the doorway, having realized that the Admiral had wandered into the washroom area. His face immediately showed panic when he saw Marcus standing there with cleaning supplies. "Admiral Morrison," Hutchins said quickly, "I apologize for this interruption. Williams is just finishing up some maintenance duties. He should have been out of your way by now." The Admiral's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened as she looked between Marcus and Chief Hutchins. Something about the situation didn't feel right to her experienced instincts. "I see," Admiral Morrison said slowly. "Williams, how long have you been at this training center?" 6 weeks, ma'am." "And your performance in training?" Marcus hesitated, unsure how to answer without seeming boastful or critical of his treatment. "I'm working hard to meet Navy standards, ma'am." Chief Hutchins stepped forward, clearly wanting to control the conversation. "Williams is a dedicated recruit, Admiral. We keep all our people busy with various duties to build character and work ethic." Admiral Morrison nodded, but her experienced eyes were seeing things that Chief Hutchins probably didn't realize were visible. She noticed the way Marcus held himself with quiet dignity despite his circumstances. She observed the contrast between his obvious competence and his current assignment. Most importantly, she sensed the tension between Marcus and Chief Hutchins. "Very well," the Admiral said finally. "Carry on, Williams." As the inspection team moved on, Marcus felt a mixture of relief and dread. He had survived the encounter without incident, but he knew that Chief Hutchins would be angry about the unexpected meeting. The Chief's carefully planned tour had been disrupted, and Marcus would undoubtedly bear the blame. What Marcus didn't know was that Admiral Morrison's sharp mind was already working, filing away details and forming questions that she would be asking before her visit was complete. Admiral Morrison's inspection continued through the training center, but her mind kept returning to the encounter with Seaman Recruit Williams. Something about the situation troubled her professional instincts. In her 30 years of military service, she had developed a keen sense for detecting problems that others might miss. The rest of Chief Hutchins's presentation proceeded smoothly. His recruits performed admirably during the formal inspection, demonstrating their knowledge and skills with precision. Hutchins beamed with pride as the Admiral observed weapons training, seamanship drills, and academic testing. Everything appeared to be running according to his high standards, but Admiral Morrison was asking herself questions that Hutchins couldn't have anticipated. Why was a recruit with such obvious bearing and professionalism assigned to janitorial duties during an important inspection? Why did the chief seem so nervous about her brief interaction with Williams? And why was there something in Williams's demeanor that suggested he was accustomed to being treated unfairly? After the formal inspection concluded, Admiral Morrison requested a private meeting with the senior training staff. This was standard procedure, allowing her to discuss observations and recommendations without the pressure of public scrutiny. Chief Hutchins expected this to be a routine debriefing, where he would receive praise for his excellent program. "Chief Hutchins," Admiral Morrison began, settling into a chair in the conference room, "your recruits demonstrate solid technical skills and military bearing. Your training program appears to be effective." Hutchins relaxed slightly, interpreting this as the beginning of a positive evaluation. "However," the Admiral continued, "I'd like to discuss some specific observations. Can you tell me about your assignment protocols for recruit duties?" The question seemed innocent enough, but Hutchins felt a flicker of unease. "We rotate assignments to ensure all recruits gain experience in various responsibilities, Admiral. It builds character and teaches them that no job is beneath a sailor's dignity." "I see. And the recruit I encountered in Building 7, Williams, how does his duty assignment fit into this rotation?" Hutchins's mouth went dry. He had hoped the Admiral would forget about that brief encounter. "Williams is a dedicated recruit who takes on additional responsibilities to improve his performance." Admiral Morrison's expression remained neutral, but her tone sharpened slightly. "Additional responsibilities? Can you elaborate?" Before Hutchins could respond, Admiral Morrison turned to another instructor present in the room. "Petty Officer Santos, isn't it? You've been observing the training program. What's your assessment of recruit performance and duty assignments?" Santos found herself in a difficult position. She outranked most of the other instructors present, but Chief Hutchins was her senior. However, Admiral Morrison was asking her a direct question, and Santos had been documenting her concerns about Marcus's treatment for weeks. "Admiral, the recruits in this company demonstrate strong performance across all areas. Their academic scores are excellent. Their physical fitness is outstanding, and their military bearing is exemplary." "All of the recruits?" Admiral Morrison asked pointedly. Santos took a deep breath. "Yes, Admiral. All of them, including Seaman Recruit Williams, who consistently performs at the top of his class despite carrying additional duty assignments." The room fell silent. Chief Hutchins shot a warning look at Santos. But Admiral Morrison was already processing this information with the analytical mind that had made her one of the Navy's most effective leaders. "Additional duty assignments," Admiral Morrison repeated slowly. "Chief Hutchins, can you provide me with a detailed breakdown of Williams' duties compared to his peers?" Hutchins realized he was walking into dangerous territory. He couldn't admit that Marcus's assignments were punitive without explaining why such punishment was necessary. But he also couldn't claim that Marcus was receiving standard treatment when the evidence clearly suggested otherwise. "Williams requires more guidance than some recruits, Admiral. He comes from a different background than most of our people." It was exactly the wrong thing to say. Admiral Morrison's eyes flashed with an anger that she kept carefully controlled. As one of the few women to reach flag rank in the Navy, she was intimately familiar with discrimination disguised as concerns about fit and background. "A different background," Admiral Morrison said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Can you be more specific about what aspects of Williams' background require special attention?" Chief Hutchins realized he had made a serious error. There was no way to answer that question without revealing his prejudices. He tried to backtrack. "What I mean, Admiral, is that Williams needs extra training to meet our standards. Yet Petty Officer Santos just informed me that Williams performs at the top of his class. Help me understand this contradiction." The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the conference room door. Admiral Morrison's aide entered and whispered something in her ear. The Admiral nodded and stood. "Gentlemen, I need to take an urgent call. Chief Hutchins, please prepare a complete record of Williams's performance evaluations, duty assignments, and any disciplinary actions. I'll review them when I return." As the Admiral left the room, Chief Hutchins felt his career prospects beginning to crumble. He knew that his treatment of Marcus wouldn't stand up to scrutiny from someone with Admiral Morrison's reputation for fairness and intolerance of discrimination. Meanwhile, Marcus had finished his cleaning duties and was preparing to return to the barracks when he encountered David Chen in the hallway. "Marcus, you missed all the excitement," Chen said. The Admiral's inspection went great, but Chief Hutchins looked like he was about to have a heart attack during the final briefing. What happened? Nobody knows for sure, but word is spreading that the Admiral asked a lot of specific questions about duty assignments and training protocols. Some people think she might be looking into complaints or problems. Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. If Admiral Morrison was investigating the training program, there was a good chance that his situation would come to light. While he wanted the harassment to stop, he also feared the consequences of being seen as a troublemaker who had complained to higher authority. When Admiral Morrison returned to the conference room, she carried herself with the bearing of someone who had made an important decision. She had spent her career fighting against the kind of discrimination she suspected was occurring here, and she wasn't about to ignore it when it was happening under her command. "Chief Hutchins," she said, settling back into her chair, "I've reviewed the preliminary information about Williams's situation. I'm scheduling a follow-up investigation into training protocols at this facility. In the meantime, I want Williams's duty assignments normalized immediately." Hutchins's face went pale. A formal investigation would scrutinize every aspect of his leadership and could end his career if discrimination was discovered. "Admiral, I assure you that Williams receives fair treatment consistent with Navy standards." "Then you should have no concerns about a thorough review," Admiral Morrison replied. "I'll be appointing an independent inspector to examine all recruit records and interview relevant personnel. The investigation will begin next week." As the meeting concluded, Chief Hutchins understood that his carefully constructed campaign against Marcus had just blown up in his face. The Admiral had seen through his excuses and identified the discrimination that he thought he had hidden so well. Admiral Morrison left the training center that day with a clear mission. She had spent her career breaking barriers and fighting for fairness in the military. She wasn't about to let a promising young sailor be driven out of the Navy by the prejudices of a small-minded chief petty officer. The investigation began the following Monday with the arrival of Commander Patricia Walsh, a naval inspector with a reputation for thoroughness and integrity. Commander Walsh had been personally selected by Admiral Morrison to conduct an impartial review of training practices at the center. Her orders were clear: examine all aspects of recruit treatment and identify any patterns of discrimination or harassment. Chief Hutchins spent the weekend in a state of barely controlled panic. He knew that a detailed investigation would expose his treatment of Marcus and potentially end his career. On Sunday evening, he made a decision that he hoped might save his position. He called Marcus into his office for a private meeting. "Williams," Hutchins began, his usual commanding tone replaced by something that almost sounded like desperation. "I've been thinking about your performance here at the training center." Marcus stood at attention, unsure what to expect. This was the first time Hutchins had spoken to him without anger or contempt in his voice. "You've shown dedication and perseverance," Hutchins continued, the words clearly difficult for him to say. "Perhaps I've been harder on you than necessary because I saw potential and wanted to push you to excellence." Marcus remained silent, recognizing this as Hutchins's attempt to reframe the harassment as tough love. It was a common tactic used by those who realized their behavior was about to be exposed. "I'm prepared to recommend you for advanced training opportunities," Hutchins said. "Perhaps specialist schools, leadership development programs. Your record could show that you responded well to intensive guidance." The offer was transparently designed to buy Marcus's silence. If Marcus agreed to characterize the harassment as beneficial training, Hutchins could claim that his methods, while tough, had produced positive results. Marcus looked directly at Chief Hutchins, seeing him clearly for the first time as a small, frightened man who had abused his authority to feel powerful. The offer of advancement was tempting, but accepting it would mean betraying every principle Marcus had learned from his mother about standing up for what was right. "Chief Hutchins," Marcus said quietly, "I appreciate your confidence in my potential, but I think it's important that the investigation proceed without any changes to my record or status." Hutchins' face flushed with anger and fear. He had offered Marcus everything he thought a recruit would want, and it had been refused. Now he had no choice but to face the consequences of his actions. Commander Walsh began her investigation by reviewing personnel records and interviewing instructors. She quickly identified patterns that confirmed Admiral Morrison's suspicions. Marcus's duty assignments were dramatically different from his peers, despite his superior performance in all measured areas. Petty Officer Santos was among the first to be interviewed. She provided detailed documentation of the incidents she had witnessed, including the marathon inspection and the pattern of extra duties assigned only to Marcus. "Commander," Santos said during her interview, "I've been in the Navy for 15 years, and I've never seen a recruit treated the way Williams has been treated. His performance has been exemplary, but he's been subjected to a level of harassment that seems designed to force him out of the service." Other instructors confirmed similar observations. Instructor Thompson testified that Marcus was among the top physical performers in the company, but was consistently subjected to additional PT requirements that weren't applied to other recruits. The navigation instructor noted that Marcus scored highest on his examinations, but was the only recruit required to repeat coursework. When Commander Walsh interviewed Marcus's fellow recruits, she found a mix of responses. Some, like David Chen, spoke honestly about what they had witnessed. Others, fearful of retaliation, minimized the harassment or claimed not to have noticed any unusual treatment. Chen's testimony was particularly damaging to Hutchins's position. "Commander, everyone in the company knew that Marcus was being singled out. We all saw it, but most of us were too scared to say anything because we didn't want to become targets ourselves." The investigation revealed that Marcus's treatment violated multiple Navy regulations regarding equal treatment of personnel. More importantly, it showed a pattern of discrimination that could potentially expose the Navy to legal liability if Marcus chose to pursue civilian remedies. When Commander Walsh finally interviewed Marcus, she found him to be articulate, professional, and surprisingly balanced in his assessment of his experiences. "Seaman Recruit Williams," she began, "can you describe your experience at this training center?" Marcus had spent considerable time thinking about how to answer this question. He wanted to be honest about what had happened without appearing vindictive or bitter. "Commander, my experience has been challenging. I've been assigned duties and held to standards that seem different from my peers, but I've also learned a great deal about perseverance and maintaining professionalism under difficult circumstances. Do you believe you've been treated fairly?" Marcus paused before answering. "No, ma'am, I don't believe I've been treated fairly. But I also believe that the Navy is bigger than any one person's prejudices. I still want to serve, and I still believe in the values that the Navy represents." Commander Walsh was impressed by Marcus's maturity and perspective. Many people in his situation would have become bitter or angry, but Marcus had maintained his dignity and his commitment to service despite the harassment he had endured. The final phase of the investigation involved interviewing Chief Hutchins himself. Walsh had saved this interview for last, wanting to have all the facts before confronting the chief with the evidence of his misconduct. Hutchins entered the interview room with the bearing of a man who knew his career was over. The weight of the evidence against him was overwhelming, and he had no credible defense for his actions. "Chief Hutchins," Commander Walsh began, "the investigation has revealed serious concerns about your treatment of Seaman Recruit Williams. Can you explain the rationale for the duty assignments and additional requirements you imposed on him?" Hutchins tried one last time to justify his actions. "Commander, Williams required additional training to meet Navy standards. His background didn't prepare him for military life the way some recruits are prepared." "What specifically about his background required different treatment?" Hutchins realized he had walked into the same trap that had ensnared him during Admiral Morrison's visit. There was no way to answer that question without revealing his discriminatory attitudes. The investigation concluded with Commander Walsh's recommendation for immediate disciplinary action against Chief Hutchins and systematic changes to training protocols to prevent similar incidents in the future. Her report would become a case study in how discrimination could persist in military institutions, despite official policies promoting equality. But perhaps the most significant outcome of the investigation was the validation it provided to Marcus. For the first time since arriving at the training center, he had official recognition that his treatment had been unfair, and that his perseverance in the face of that treatment demonstrated the character the Navy valued in its sailors. 3 weeks after the investigation concluded, Marcus was summoned to the administration building for what he assumed would be another routine meeting. He had grown accustomed to unexpected calls and assignments, though the atmosphere at the training center had changed dramatically since Chief Hutchins's removal from his position. The new chief, Chief Petty Officer Maria Rodriguez, had created an environment of fairness and mutual respect that was almost shocking in its contrast to the previous regime. Marcus's duty assignments had been normalized, and for the first time since arriving at the center, he was being evaluated based purely on his performance and potential. As Marcus approached the administration building, he was surprised to see several official vehicles parked outside, including one with Admiral's flags. His stomach tightened with familiar anxiety, even though he had done nothing wrong. Months of harassment had taught him to be wary of unexpected attention from authority figures. Inside the building, Marcus was directed to a large conference room, where he found Admiral Morrison waiting, along with Commander Walsh, Chief Rodriguez, and several other senior officers he didn't recognize. The setting felt formal and important in a way that made Marcus wonder if he was in trouble, despite the investigation's findings. Admiral Morrison stood as Marcus entered the room, a gesture of respect that surprised him. Throughout his time in the Navy, Marcus had learned that admirals didn't typically stand for seaman recruits. "Williams," Admiral Morrison said, "please have a seat. We have some important matters to discuss with you." Marcus sat carefully, maintaining perfect posture despite his nervousness. The assembled officers represented more authority than he had ever been in the same room with, and their serious expressions gave no hint about the purpose of this meeting. "First," Admiral Morrison continued, "I want to personally apologize for the treatment you received at this training center. The discrimination and harassment you endured were completely unacceptable and contrary to everything the Navy stands for." The apology was unexpected and deeply meaningful to Marcus. Having his experiences acknowledged and validated by the Navy's senior leadership helped heal wounds that had been festering for months. "Thank you, Admiral," Marcus replied. "I appreciate that very much." Admiral Morrison nodded and continued. "The investigation revealed not only the injustice of your treatment, but also your remarkable character and resilience in the face of that treatment. Your performance throughout this ordeal has been exemplary." She paused to let her words sink in before continuing. "Marcus, I'm here today to offer you some choices about your future in the Navy. You could continue with standard training and proceed to your assigned fleet position. Given what you've endured, no one would question that decision." Marcus waited, sensing that there was more to come. "However," Admiral Morrison said, "I'd like to present you with some alternatives. Your academic performance, leadership potential, and demonstrated character have impressed everyone who has worked with you. We'd like to offer you the opportunity to attend the Naval Academy Prep School, with the goal of eventually attending the Naval Academy itself." The offer hit Marcus like a thunderbolt. The Naval Academy was the most prestigious path to a naval career, producing the officers who would lead the Navy for generations to come. It was an opportunity that Marcus had never dared to dream about. "Additionally," Admiral Morrison continued, "if you're interested in a different path, we can arrange for you to attend any of several specialized training programs. You could become a nuclear technician, an intelligence specialist, or pursue advanced training in communications technology." Marcus struggled to process what he was hearing. The same institution that had tried to crush his spirit through Chief Hutchins was now offering him opportunities that went far beyond his original goals. "Admiral," Marcus said slowly, "I'm honored by these offers. Could I ask why you're presenting them to me?" Admiral Morrison smiled, the first time Marcus had seen her expression soften. "Because, Williams, the Navy needs officers who understand what it means to persevere in the face of adversity. We need leaders who know how to maintain their integrity when others try to compromise it. Most importantly, we need people who can look beyond the failures of individuals to see the higher purpose of our institution." She gestured to the other officers in the room. "Everyone here has reviewed your record, not just from the past few months, but your entire background. Your academic achievements, your work ethic, your commitment to family, and your performance under pressure all indicate that you have the potential to be an exceptional naval officer." Marcus thought about his journey from the streets of Detroit to this conference room. He thought about his mother, working double shifts to pay for his sister's education. He thought about the humiliation of cleaning toilets while his peers prepared for inspection. And he thought about the dream that had sustained him through all of it, the possibility of building a better life through service to something greater than himself. "Admiral," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt, "I'd be honored to attend the Naval Academy Prep School. That represents everything I hoped the Navy could offer when I enlisted." Admiral Morrison nodded approvingly. Excellent choice. You'll begin prep school in 6 weeks, which gives you time to complete your current training cycle and prepare for the academic challenges ahead. As the meeting concluded and the officers began to file out, Admiral Morrison approached Marcus personally. "Williams, I want you to understand something important. What happened to you here was wrong, but your response to it was extraordinary. You didn't become bitter or angry. You didn't give up or lash out. You maintained your dignity and your commitment to excellence despite everything that was thrown at you." She paused, looking directly into Marcus's eyes. "That kind of character can't be taught in any classroom or training program. It comes from within, and it's exactly what the Navy needs in its future leaders." Marcus felt a profound sense of validation and hope. The months of harassment and humiliation suddenly seemed less important than the opportunities that lay ahead. Chief Hutchins had tried to break him, but instead had inadvertently revealed the strength of character that would carry Marcus to heights he had never imagined possible. 6 months later, Marcus stood in formation at the Naval Academy Prep School, surrounded by young men and women who shared his determination to serve and lead. His path to this moment had been more difficult than most, but it had also been more meaningful. He knew that when he eventually graduated and became an officer, he would never forget what it felt like to be judged unfairly or treated with disrespect. Years later, when Marcus had become Lieutenant Commander Williams and was leading sailors of his own, he would often think about his time at the training center. He made sure that every sailor under his command was treated with dignity and given a fair chance to succeed, regardless of their background or circumstances. He understood that the Navy's strength came not from its ships or weapons, but from the character of the people who served. Chief Hutchins, meanwhile, had been quietly transferred to a desk job at a remote base, his career effectively over. The investigation had revealed a pattern of discriminatory behavior that extended beyond Marcus to other recruits over the years. He spent his remaining time in service processing paperwork and wondering how his prejudices had ultimately destroyed everything he had worked to build. But Marcus rarely thought about Hutchins anymore. He was too busy building a career, a family, and a legacy based on the principle that everyone deserves to be judged by their character and performance rather than their background or appearance. The young man who had once cleaned toilets to satisfy a bigot's malice had grown into a leader who ensured that such injustices never happened to others on his watch.